Panel.
Thank you very much. Well, you've already done such a great job of introducing the panel. I don't need to say much more other than to say, we're going to try and make this a little fun. How's everyone feeling in the room right now? Yeah? Oh, I like it. We got some energy in the room. Excellent. Does anyone else have like songs that they listen to just to like really power up on days like today, where you know you're going to be in lots of meetings, there's going to be lots of stimulating conversations? I've been listening to Don't Stop Believing, right? A little bit of Journey. I'm going to introduce our wonderful panelists here in just a minute. But before I do, does anyone else have any songs they want to share for the playlist that we're going to have for our power half an hour here? Looks like you've got a song on your mind. Is there one going through your head?
No one would know it.
That's okay. We'll add it to the playlist. Well, what's the song?
It's called Born for This, and it's by a local artist from Boulder, Colorado. But the message is all about we're in this together. This challenge is familiar, and I recognize.
Fantastic. There you go. Songs that make us laugh, songs that make us cry, songs that make us dance. Kim, I know you got one, right?
It's called Resilience by Rising Appalachia, and it's all about the need for women's leadership and people on the front lines to help us make it to the other side of this.
Nice. There you go. You got a song as well. Yeah. All right. Let's hear it.
Save the World by Jarvis Smith. It's a cover version of a Swedish House Mafia song. But this one goes directly to supporting MAPA, most affected people in areas. Fridays for Future.
There you go. I love it. All right. Well, we've already got some good songs, some good playlists going. And now we're going to get into talking about the circular economy with two amazing experts. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Mary and Haley. Haley is from Dow and Mary is from Lenovo. And what we're going to do actually is start by having each of you guys share what your songs are. So Haley, do you want to go first? What's your power-up song for this Wednesday?
Imagine by John Lennon.
Oh, classic. Imagine by John Lennon. I saw the sign this morning in Central Park, so we're on the same page here. Very good. And how about you, Mary? What are you listening to?
I'm going to say...
Oh, is it on?
Hello?
I think it's on.
Okay. I'm going to say anything by Sylvan Esso, which is my hometown band.
Always good to have the hometown. All right, well, listen, we're going to tuck in. If you guys have anything that you specifically want to ask our panelists, make sure you let us know. But let's start by talking about the vision, okay? We're here to talk about the circular economy, the links to leadership, business models, and global opportunities in this space. But let's hear from your perspectives in the industries you work in, what does the vision of a future fit circular economy look like? You want to start, Haley?
Sure. So for those who may not know Dow, Dow's a 125-year-old material science company. And I would say the future vision of what a future fit economy looks like is going to be circular and low carbon. There's no question in my mind. Dow has set pretty ambitious targets. So by 2050, carbon neutrality targets, as well as by 2030 to transform the waste. And that's to commercialize 3 million tons of circular and renewable products. So both of these are really aimed at attacking the carbon and the circularity challenges because frankly, they're going to be a generational challenge that we have an opportunity to work on. So.
Totally. I love that idea of that there's a long-term vision and then there's the short-term actions we take to get there. So it's breaking that all out. Cool. Mary, do you want to talk a little bit about the vision for a future fit circular economy in your industry?
Yes. So I think it's really important to think about it in terms of collaboration across the value chain. And so specifically working with our suppliers to make sure that they're supporting our circular design vision, but also working with our customers to make sure we're providing circular solutions for them and that we're able to get product back and materials back that we can reuse as part of this virtuous circle.
Amazing. I'm so glad you guys brought up the sort of need for the vision, the thinking long term, with the urgency, with also this idea that we're not doing this alone. this is together. And actually, to drive the systems level change, we really need a movement of movements. We need collaboration and partnerships across our value chains, supply chains, and with a range of partners. Well, let's dig a little bit deeper. Because I know one of the other things I think people are interested always in is what this looks like from a business model perspective. Because we know there's going to need to be innovative approaches. We're going to need to really reimagine production, consumption, how we think of waste. So Haley, what does that look like for you at Dow?
Yeah, so being at the front end of the value chain, we have a responsibility and frankly a privilege to decarbonize our industry as well as provide circular products and materials that our customers want. And so what does that even look like? I mean, I think you are a system design thinker, and oftentimes when we think about a material ecosystem, that really starts about where waste is generated. So if you think about waste, oftentimes it's generated at a household.
Yep.
It's then collected, it's sorted, it's processed through recycling or reuse facilities, and then ultimately it goes into applications like cosmetics or toothpaste tubes or automobiles. And so there's a wide range of where the materials can go. But never before has a company that makes materials worked with waste companies on the other side of the chain. And so that's what I think is super unique about the business model, is that when we're talking about take, make, dispose of how we used to operate, frankly, as a society, that was a long line.
Yeah.
And now the two ends of that line are coming back together to make a circle, and that's where waste companies as well as companies like ours on the materials side fit together. And so last year we announced a partnership with, we announced a collaboration with Waste Management, and we were actually doing several pilots where we're trying to get hard to recycle plastic material out of the landfills and being able to collect that curbside. So we were testing, can consumers recycle it? Do they recycle it? What's the quality of the waste that actually looks like? And we found some pretty interesting results in that study. And so I think it goes to start to prove that plastics at a recycling rate of less than 9%, we really can work on system change to get that to be much more.
Fantastic. All right, let's hear, Mary. What does that look like? What does it look like at Lenovo from a business model perspective?
Well, that's a great lead-in. So I don't know if you all are familiar with Lenovo, but we're the world's largest PC manufacturer, and we also make everything from pocket to cloud. So cell phones, tablets, PCs, servers. And in doing that, we make a lot of hardware and we use a lot of materials. And so when we think about our circular economy approach, we are really thinking about circular design. So the choices we're making when we build our products, circular use, so making sure that our customers can use our products to support their circularity goals, and then circular return. So to your point, will we be able to get this back? And so from a circular design perspective, we've really been focused for almost 20 years now on the use of post-consumer recycled content. And so we started with post-consumer recycled content in some of our hardware products that were sort of stationary, so things like desktops and monitors that don't have a lot of movement. And it worked. And so we expanded that to use post-consumer recycled content in mobile devices, so things like laptops. You might have had a ThinkPad laptop at some point in your career. And that has really high engineering requirements when you have a mobile device like that. And so it worked. We were able to work with our suppliers to come up with new engineering grades of resin that contained recycled content, and we used it at volume. We've used many, many millions of kilograms of post-consumer recycled content over the years. But we knew that wasn't enough, and so in 2017, we challenged our product developers and our supply chain procurement teams to work with our suppliers to specifically source from closed-loop sources, so used IT, used electronics. And that actually, we were able to build on some of our previous success in our engineering know-how, but it's kind of a different animal when you think about closing the loop, because you're sourcing materials that have been used for a long time, maybe exposed to the elements, and people don't make PCs out of the same materials that we used to 20 years ago. I think I bring this up as an example because it's something that we did to close the loop and to make our products from our own waste stream. But we also wanted to create a market for our recyclers for mixed plastic, which traditionally has been a very low value commodity for them. So we're trying to create a market for this material.
Can I add on that?
You
'Cause
absolutely can, Haley.
I think it's so important because if you start to think about waste having value, we really have to define even just the nature of waste, like what we call it, how we value it, how we use it. And I think that's what you guys have done by creating the pull through of saying, like, we are going to take that material back and we're going to use that. And so that oftentimes can be one of the missing links to really close the loop is commitments by companies saying we want to use recycled and renewable content embedded into the places that we have that. So I think that's great progress by you guys.
Thank you.
There we go. Well, so we've talked a little bit about business models, and we are already starting to talk about really how this works for both of your organizations. But I think if we could go a little bit deeper and talk about, this is complicated to be both minimizing our environmental footprints while at the same time optimizing resources and thinking about this whole sort of holistic circular system that's being created. So I wonder if you could just share some of the lessons that you've learned in sort of really applying and implementing some of these strategies. And if you would, I think we can talk a lot about the things that work, but what are some of the challenges you've faced on that journey? Do you want to start, Haley?
Yeah, sure. When we think about carbon and circularity,
Hello. There you go.
So when we think about carbon and circularity, oftentimes many companies operate those two different buckets and opportunities in different organizations. And this is a huge opportunity of actually how we can start thinking about carbon and circularity together. I think one of the examples that I'm most excited about and companies that we've learned about is a company called New Energy Blue. And they actually take a waste stream from agricultural waste, so corn stover, so the pieces of the corn that are left over, they take that and they convert it into a biomass that they take into a feedstock that we use as an input to make future plastic products. And I love that because it's basically taking a waste stream, it's helping farmers, and it is reducing the carbon footprint of that product. So it's both circular and carbon, using a waste stream and lowering the carbon footprint or the LCA of that material that our customers need. And so we, again, being at the front end of the value chain, it's critical that we find ways to help our customers meet their sustainability goals. And that's our responsibility to be able to do that through lower carbon footprint products.
Fantastic. So Mary, what about how do you go deeper into this how of what this looks like?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that we really try to do is that we try to do this at volume. So when we make a commitment, and we have made a commitment to use recycled content in every product we ship, with the exception of cell phones, which it's really hard to do, but for all PCs and servers. And so to do that at volume, you have to be able to source consistent high quality and high quantities of this material for every manufacturing plant, wherever you're making product around the world. And so it's not easy, and it requires a lot of effort to set this up, and it makes sense for us to then do it at volume. Once we've gone through the effort of qualifying materials, qualifying applications and suppliers, we traditionally do this at volume. So that's one thing I'll mention. The other thing, to talk to a point that Haley made earlier about will customers return it? I think that's a real challenge because in our space with electronics, people tend to hold on to it. They remember fondly, or they remember how much they paid for it, or they think someone will be able to use it. And so people tend to hang on to electronics for a while. And so trying to come up with ways to make it easier for people to return them while there's still value, and to be able to recover value from the materials that are contained in that is hard. We do that through a variety of different ways, through different partners around the world, because we know that the incentives might be different in different parts of the world. But generally speaking, we're trying to help our customers make it as easy as possible for them to return product at the end of life and get value out of it themselves.
Yeah, super interesting. Well, and your point about it not being easy, I think it's interesting because if it was easy, people would have already done it, right? So when it's hard, it often means you're into those like crunchy, difficult places, but that's where the leadership opportunity is. So when things are not easy, it's usually a sign that you're heading into some good places. And your point about scale is well taken, and your point about behavior change, because we do talk a lot about systems change, right? This is going to require systems change. What is systems change? Generally, it's about, we got to have different policies, different rules, but it's about culture change, and culture really comes down to behavior. So I think it's really interesting to hear how both of you have reflected on that. So let's build in a link now to what we're talking around circular economy with net zero. So I know we've seen a few net zero conversations happen over the last couple of days, including a conversation just before we took these couches. But could you share a little bit about where you see the most exciting examples of where net zero and circular economy are meeting? Haley, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I gave the example of New Energy Blue, but one of the other exciting things that Dow has been investing in is we invest about $1 billion a year in our decarbonization strategy, and it's significant. We have a strategy to decarbonize and grow, which means we continue to serve our customers' growing priorities while also decarbonizing our manufacturing assets. And we've done that through an announcement that we've made in Alberta and Canada to invest in the world's first zero carbon emissions cracker complex for scope 1 and 2. And we're really excited about this because it's actually taking the off gases, converting that into hydrogen, using the hydrogen to actually provide the fuel for the facility, and then also investing in carbon capture and storage technologies. And so I just mentioned this because it's one of the things that is absolutely critical. I think companies get stuck with how are we going to hit our net zero targets? How are we going to get to those points? And a lot of companies are buying offsets. And I think one of the things that we've really challenged ourselves to do is how do we create a deep investment strategy as well as building on what our customers are asking for, which is circular and low carbon products.
Yeah, okay, super interesting. So Mary, how about from Lenovo's perspective?
So I think I want to build on that and talk about it in the context of trade-offs too, and how important it is to have very good data when you're thinking about your ESG goals overall, but especially when you're connecting things like circular economy and net zero. So making sure you actually understand the impact of the decisions you're making. So whether that's through LCA or simplified product carbon footprints, but making sure that when you're making design choices for circular economy, you're not doing it to the detriment of your climate change goals. And so certainly that's one of the trade-offs that you have to consider. And sometimes when it comes to things like materials, you can add recycled content, but it may add weight. You may have to use more of it. And so ultimately, is that the best thing to do to get to your net zero goals? And so you really have to be thoughtful about it and make sure you understand all the impacts. To your point earlier about, where are we seeing some exciting examples of that? I think there are a lot of different industries that are doing some really creative things here. One of the ones I'll mention is a partner of ours, Schneider Electric, that is in the energy and efficiency space. And so they've really taken a great approach at combining both the circular economy approach, whether it's through the design of their services or their hardware or how they deliver their hardware, and then also marrying that with an effort to try to help their customers meet their net zero goals. So that's an example, I think, of a partner of ours that's doing a lot of good things.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, both of your examples are really focusing on ways in which you can really understand what's happening and figure out the ways to innovate around those insights that you're capturing through really understanding the problem. And, I love the point on data because, you treasure what you measure, and it's really important to measure what matters. That's sort of a phrase that I know goes around. So I think really making these connections so that there's, real authenticity to the approach and, a platform to have a shared conversation because you have metrics that are easy for people to understand. All right, well, we've got a little bit more time for one more question. I wasn't sure if we were going to have time for this one, but we do. So,
is it movie or book or song?
Oh, we could. Oh, actually, maybe we should do that. But actually, no. Before we get to a fun, playful final question, we are in a panel that is called Technology on Purpose and Circular Economy. So we know that there is a lot of technology innovations that are coming. We also know there's regenerative materials, and there's a lot of, more of these systemic interventions that you've both already mentioned. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how we think about prioritizing these different new things that are coming into our spaces? And what are some of the big milestones you see for how and where these technologies, these new materials, these new systems are going to be implemented and adopted? So yeah, Haley, do you want to go first?
From a prioritization,
I think we're doing some microphone switching here, but
everyone is broken that I touch.
yeah. You want to try that one?
Yeah, I think it works.
Okay,
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, so from a prioritization standpoint, I think for us, it's really trying to understand what part of the system is actually broken that needs to be unlocked. And so if you think about technology helping enable and accelerate the circular economy, it's taking a systems lens and saying, in India, collection's not the issue, but processing isn't the issue. Or in Indonesia, collection is the problem. And so how do you infuse technology into those parts of the system that are broken or that need unlocking so that we can get more supply of materials to be able to put into the PCs and the computers? And so I think that's one piece on the technology side. And I would say AI is really accelerating a lot of these things. How can it improve the quality of the waste? The waste that comes in, can it characterize and understand what type of quality of the waste is coming in? So what streams could it go down to and where it could fit back into which end market? So I think those are some of the things that I foresee in terms of priorities and new technologies.
Super interesting. I'm actually going to ask you to hold on to the mic for just a second, because you talked about understanding what is broken, and you use the example of India, but how do you do that? Like, is that mapping? Like, what does that look like in practice for other people that are thinking, oh, we need to be understanding that approach of like really being quite almost forensic and what isn't working? So what does that look like? Is it?
I think it's a few ways you can approach it. We've formed a few different partnerships. One in Southeast Asia called Circulate Capital. They're basically an impact investing organization, and they do a lot of work to find out what the system looks like locally on the ground, because you can't take a broad brush. But that's been about $100 million investment fund between Dow, Coke, Unilever, Pepsi, P&G, Danone, and several other brands.
Yep.
And what we do is pool the money into the fund to de-risk that part of the system. And I think that really helps us figure out how do we scale it, and then how do we invest in maybe a smaller company at that stage and allow them to be able to grow further so that we can get the scale that's needed. So de-risking and investment.
Fantastic. And just great to hear you talk again about this like golden thread that seems to be weaving through all of the remarks, which is the importance of collaboration. So this isn't something you're doing alone. You're doing it with others that have other insights, other expertise that can contribute into, again, that sort of wider system dynamic. So super cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. So Mary.
Okay.
Technology. Mary, I assume
it's
you might have
working.
something to say on this one.
Yeah. So I guess I'll touch upon the regenerative materials one
Yes,
first.
please.
And I'll just mention that I think each organization in every industry has different opportunity for using regenerative materials and thinking about the circular economy in that light. For us, it's really with packaging. And I think there's a ton of stuff going on in the packaging world, looking at innovative new materials that you can use. In some cases, they even have better cushioning properties than the materials they're replacing. And so we've found that with materials like sugarcane and bamboo, we can actually make our notebook boxes smaller and fit more on a pallet, and then there's a slightly lower carbon impact from shipping. But there are different use cases for that, but I think there is a lot of really good stuff going on in the packaging world, which I know you're very familiar with. And then in terms of innovation, I think I'll give two examples from a technology perspective. And one is a customer of ours in the Netherlands called Actual. And they are an architecture and design firm, and they're using 3D printing with recycled content as a feedstock to make interiors and architectural features. And it's circular from the perspective of they're using recycled content, but when they build an architectural feature or an interior with a 3D printer, there's no waste. They only built what they want. And so I think there's a lot of stuff like that going on in these industries that are not necessarily technology industries, but they're leveraging technology.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'll say is that innovation right now, what I'm seeing a lot of it also in is not just like hardware or how we make things, but how we track impact. And so I think a lot of us probably have the same challenges with managing all these legacy systems that have data that support our net zero commitments or our circular economy commitments. And I think what's been energizing to me to see is that all parts of our business are jumping on board, including our IT and digital transformation teams.
Yep.
And so really looking at how can we innovate the way we manage this data to be able to demonstrate our commitment and our performance towards that commitment. So I think there's innovation also happening on the data management side.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Well, we have a few minutes left, which means I can throw in an extra little playful question. And I promise you, it's not a scary one.
Okay.
But it is actually just thinking, we've got a lot of complexity out in the system right now, right? There's a lot of things going on, and both of your organizations are really leaning in to try and figure out how do we make sense of this. If you could choose one lever you could pull in our current system, or another way to think is if you had a magic wand and had a wish that you could make, what would be the one change you'd like to see that you think could really accelerate all the work that you're both working on? I see you nodding your head, Haley. Do you want to go first?
But I need your
You're my okay.
So from my side, we're here at Climate Week, right? So from my side, it's really clear. It's policy. It's a harmonized policy. So right now, the UN is negotiating a global plastic pollution treaty. And so the third round of negotiations comes up in Kenya in November. So I think a harmonized policy for circularity and really finding ways to solve the plastic waste issue is going to be one of the things that we as the private sector really need.
I wish I had that magic wand to just be okay, and wish granted. All right. What do you think, Mary? What wish would you have here for a lever that could be changed?
I think there's a lever that we already have, and that's educating people about the real impact of different decisions that are being made, and getting away from the greenwashing and the splashy claims that don't necessarily have a lot of substance beneath that. And so I'm really energized by the level of maturity that I see going. It's rising across all sorts of different industries, but I think that having a stronger understanding of what the real impact is and where you can really make a difference is really important.
Amazing. Well, what I love about both your responses is that they both fit into that structure of what is systems change? Because we do talk about systems change a lot, but when you really break it down, what systems change is about policy, and it's about culture, and culture is about decisions, and decisions are fed by data in many cases. So I think that's a really wonderful note to end it off. We've hit through all the questions. A great conversation. It's been great to learn more about both of you and what you're working on, and some of the music you like to groove to. Are there any other songs anyone else wants to bring into the mix?
Anyone?
Anyone?
Songs?
Anyone?
Oh,
Jack's
that's
Victoria's
good.
Secret. Nice. Nice. Any others? We got room on the playlist.
No Swifties? None?
No
Okay.
Swifties? No. Well, maybe that can be a conversation you can all enjoy over dinner. Thanks, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of the Climate Week. Thank you both to our amazing panelists and to the organizers.
Thank you so much.
And look at that. 5, 4,
think-
3, 2, and we are clear.
I might have to also.
Nice. Nice. Sure.